nearly 5:30, we'll call the March 12th Public Works Committee meeting to order. Lori, if you would make sure we're all here.
Mr. Iverson?
Present.
Mr. Liticote?
Yes.
Mr. Rogers?
Yes.
Mr. Schrader?
Yes.
All are present.
Okay. All right, the agenda was sent out, and so everybody's had a chance to look at it and those things. And we would need a motion to approve the agenda for this evening.
So move.
Second.
A motion and a second. Any further discussion? Hearing none, all those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Those opposed? Motion carries. Public communications and comment. There's no one in the room, however, I would like to make a comment. After our last meeting, we were cautioned in the local media about our discussion drifting away from the agenda. I discussed this with our city attorney and Mrs. Rich, and I want to apologize to the committee. After being around this for as long as I have, should have known that perhaps we were drifting a bit in our discussion outside of the agenda, and so I assure you I will do my best along with Mrs. Rich and any city officials here to make sure that we stay on task. So, and our discussions do not venture into things that are not publicly noticed in our agenda. So you have my apologies, and we will desperately try not to have that happen again in the future.
May I say something? This is a copy of the last month's agenda. And it says on here, commercial garbage collection. And what we talked about was commercial garbage collection. Is that not true? On the private side. It's still, I believe it's still within the realm of what that asks for. So, Mr. Editor can do whatever he wants with his editor.
Well, if I can also make a comment, I read that and looked up what his findings were, and they certainly seemed appropriately true. I don't think anybody here did anything that they didn't realize or didn't understand. Sometimes what we don't know, we don't know. It's not a great excuse, but nobody meant any harm. But I am troubled a little bit though by why would a media outlet do anything that would discourage citizens, like some of us are, we're not elected officials, to participate in civic duties such as this. It makes you want to say, why bother? And I'm not going to do that, but that is why today there is a lot less participation in community governments because of things like that. There's a different way it could have been handled, and I'm not going to go into that, but I'm done.
Okay, any other public comment? All right, hearing none, the meeting minutes from February 6th were distributed. Hopefully you've had a chance to review them. We would need a motion to approve them.
I make a motion to approve the February 6, 2020 minutes.
Thank you, Doug.
Second?
Thank you, Tom. We have a motion and a second to approve the February 6th meeting minutes. Any further discussion? All those in favor of the motion say aye.
Aye.
Those opposed? Motion carries. Thank you. Discussion items tonight. We have one, and it would be on the topic of columbarium. And Mike put together, and thank you so much for this, a kind of comparison sheet to the two companies that provided proposals to us, along with drafts of a agreement, sales agreement, I believe, and yeah, different things along those lines. So I guess Mike will let you take the.
So what I wanted to do with this, and this came up with a discussion with Lori and I on the two companies, as a comparison, I wanted to have no names in them, so that we're comparing Company A and Company B. All right, and making the best decision we can financially, and what is in the best, whether quality or references. So the references are below, and then the costing and the revenue is at the end of the sheet there between the two companies. There were some discrepancies and some differences in funding between the two companies, and I think whether it's company A or B, I think there's a way that we can still make this happen. Obviously, if we have other funding, it happens quicker. But I already have a gentleman stopped down. And I think it was last week. Dave and Heather Benish. She has passed away and is on the mantle, and he's already signed up to purchase 2. So we are receiving a lot of interest. I could see 6 to 8 of these be sold soon.
Based on the,
Yep.
on the comparison, it looks like company B would be the choice
The choice, yes.
that would yield the most return and comparison to comparison,
Mhm.
okay?
I also wanted to put together how we would run the program. So, honestly, this is not, while I directed this is my secretary and I working on this. Obviously, she is valuable to this process and we have worked on this, but most credit goes to my secretary on this, with my overseeing it, okay? So we took pieces and bits of things from around communities and other cemeteries, and kind of put what we thought would fit best into this columbarium and how we would run the program.
Okay.
I have a question. Assuming this goes and council approves it, will we run this by Lud?
We
The
can,
deed-
yes.
The deed and the purchase agreement? I
Mhm.
mean, it looks okay to me, but I've never
Yep.
practiced in this area.
Yep.
So maybe run it by him,
Mhm.
maybe he might see something, or just to get his okay with it?
Yep.
All right.
Any other discussion for
The,
topic?
the one second to last on the bottom, no floral memorials or ornamentation will be attached. The city reserves a right to remove. I assume we would use some sense of compassion if somebody put something up, we wouldn't rush right out there to take it
Correct.
down. 2 months after.
We have some of the same wording, a little bit throughout the cemeteries here, that they're allowed to place them. If they do become deteriorated and, whether, if they're plastic or whatever, and they're faded and things like that, they are removed and the area is typically cleaned up. We just don't go removing things. We debated on that particular piece. Do we allow something for 3 days? What do we do? That's what we ended up coming up with. Feel free to have input on that. We're open to anything that you guys feel.
Well, if we could alter them, I'd only make one suggestion, that we reserve the right to leave something such as an adornment up for, maximum or minimum of 7 days or something. There's no reason to rush it. No plant or plastic or live or otherwise is gonna hurt anything in a week.
Correct.
Probably.
Correct.
Um,
And we did talk about that in some wording on that.
His family members still around and, you know, all that.
You know, with what's written here, we reserve that right to leave it or take it away based on its condition. I mean, we're not gonna rush out there and, oh, this has gotta go, we have other things to do too, but if it's tipped over, blown away, whatever, we're probably gonna have to clean it up a little bit, okay?
I have one other question here, and we may have talked about this previously. What are we gonna do with the additional revenue this generates? Sustain them in the cemetery?
So this is my vision, the same thing I did with the parks. The revenue stays in that particular area. Okay? That's what I'm trying to do with the cemeteries. In the past, it's got spent into the general budget. I feel that the revenue from the parks stays in the parks for refurbishing. That's how we're running that program. Same thing with the cemeteries. I have a spreadsheet, I'm collecting that. That should also stay with the cemeteries. We have a lot of needs in the cemeteries. I just got pricing for cutting down dead trees, and this isn't a lot of them, and it was $17,000. Right now, we don't have $17,000 to take care of those trees. But I know they need to get down at some point. The paving into the cemeteries, the blacktop needs to be some attention at some point for that. I have a long-term plan for that. I have not brought it to this committee. But I would recommend that any revenue stay with that particular department. And we can make those upgrades. And at some point, we can grow the columbariums, we could do whatever, but we would have that funding.
Okay, do you think there's room for another columbarium?
But we have a lot of room out there, yes.
That's what I thought.
Mhm.
Okay, no, no, I understand, those trees gotta come down. The
Yep.
cemeteries need to be kept up, and I think
Yep.
keeping this in there will then keep that improved and keep the pressure off other parts of the city budget, I think.
Yep.
All right, thank you, Al.
Okay. One thing I noticed, the top bullet point, it said only one human cremated remains will be allowed per
Yes.
niche. Is that standard?
That is standard. We have seen, at some private cemeteries that they do allow, one human remains and one pet remains. But who's really gonna know what's going in there?
Sure.
So, yes, we are recommending that as standard, for that.
Okay. All right. Lori, what would be the next step then?
If the committee would make a recommendation to take this to council and either recommendation to move forward or not.
Okay.
It seems as though company B is the best solution at this time. Depending on funding, we could make a recommendation that, and I'm just throwing a couple things out there, some food for thought, if you will. This particular one, and we would need to have half down up front for the columbarium. That doesn't mean we couldn't start the cement work for the placement, because that's very minimal cost, and we are collecting costs from open and closing graves. We are, if this goes, we will start to collect money for the selling of the niches. And then when we get enough funding for half down, I believe that then we could go ahead and place the order. Last year in opening and closings, we probably did almost $19,000, so we could, at some point start to, pay for this columbarium. I did talk to Bill Neal, and he's in Florida right now. There was somewhere around 11 to over $10,000 on the lower end there, I think, that could be a potential donation. I don't have an answer on that, at this point. I think if pending funding, I don't know how you would put that, pending funding, you're good at this, when the funding comes in, we build it and
Sure.
stuff like, you know what I'm saying?
Yeah,
Okay?
Yeah.
Just some food for thought on that. That's how I was seeing this.
but we could begin the prep work
That is correct.
and those type of things, and then once we have accessed the funds for the half down through, it sounds like through, the sale of
Sales, donations,
donations
things like
and,
that.
fees,
Yep.
um,
that
gathered
combination.
through the
Mhm.
cemetery. Once that amount is reached, we could then authorize, the
Yep.
council could authorize the building of it.
Correct.
Does that make sense? Yes, sir.
Do we need a resolution for him for Mike to do the concrete, the sub? I mean, that's a minimal cost, right, Mike? that what
It is
you
a
said?
minimal cost. I'm thinking of tying this, if this was a goal, I would tie this into our current concrete guy coming up with our curbs, our gutters. We would separate it out. We would know what the cost is. That's the way we're gonna get the best pricing. Ourselves as a department, will be able to dig the hole. It's just a matter of digging the hole, them framing it up and pouring the cement and finishing it off.
Because it sounds like to me this is probably gonna go through council, it's probably gonna get it okay, but if we have the concrete already poured, then work can begin with it, immediately. We wouldn't have to mess with all this and it just moves it around a little bit, the cost is minimal, a few grand, probably, and,
At the most, a couple, I put 3,000, but I know, it's
it's a minimal cost, and I think,
3 or 4 yards of cement at $100
yeah, so, I mean,
a yard.
do we need a motion, a resolution for Mike to pour that, or can he just do that on his own?
We would probably include that in the approval from the council.
Okay, well-
These are the steps that would be taken as we explain all of this. Basically, it sounds like Lori is saying if it's a recommendation from this committee that, this move forward, identifying company B as a preferred vendor. And also, the agreement, a draft of the agreement is attached for council to chew on. Once we get that approval, we can move forward then.
So I would move we accept company B with the idea that beginning prep work up to $4,000 can be done once council approves it, and that completion of the project would happen once one half of the collection toward the project is obtained.
Okay, we have a motion, do we have a second?
I'll second that motion.
Any discussion? Hearing none, all those in favor of the motion signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Those opposed? Motion carries. We will bring this forward. Any for agenda items for the next meeting? If you think of anything, feel free to let,
Well, I have an idea.
Okay.
How about, and I think I've talked to you a little bit about this before, in the past, Laurie, having LED lighting put in City Hall, what kind of cost savings and what kind of costs it would take. I'm guessing it's probably gonna be around 25 grand to do this, but it might be more. But I wanna know what maybe the cost savings every month is gonna be with LED lighting as opposed to fluorescent lighting or other kinds of lighting.
I'll have all that information for you by the next meeting. I
Okay.
already have a guy coming in next week to assess. I've provided him, am I off subject?
No, we're talking a little bit, so we're kind of iffy, so.
Sorry,
Just,
Yeah, I
let's stop
would-
right there, just say you'll have the
Yeah.
information next meeting.
thank
Yeah.
you.
Okay, anything else? Of course, if you think of anything, you can let me know, or Lori know, or Mike know, and we'll certainly put it on the agenda for the next meeting. We will have Karen work her magic to put together a date for our meeting in April. And with that, we need one last motion.
I'll make a motion to adjourn the meeting.
Second.
We have a motion and a second, any discussion? Hearing none, all those in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carries. Thank you, everyone.